ranking the available quarterbacks for those teams that are not in the tournament currently, that are in full offseason mode. Which quarterbacks would a team like, say, the Indianapolis Colts rank as the number one option for them if they're willing to utilize their draft position at number 4 to go get? And is Brock Purdy really the really real deal for the San Francisco 49ers going into the divisional round of playoffs? All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Today's episode presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. We're going to talk a lot about quarterbacks on today's episode, and it's the most important position in the NFL, if not pro sports. So why not? And pretty important quarterbacking happening in the playoffs, but also pretty important decisions for those teams that need a quarterback in the offseason, Matt. And there's some overflow mailbag questions that we didn't have time to get into yesterday that was asking about, okay, well, how do you rank the college quarterbacks right now? Well, how do you rank the free agent quarterbacks? How do you rank like Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield and those guys? And then it's like, okay, well, what about the big fish that are still out there? What if a team went calling for Lamar Jackson? What if a team went calling for, say, Aaron Rodgers if he was willing to move on? And it sounded like Aaron Rodgers is keeping all of his options open right now. Tom Brady's still out there. Does he retire? Does he not? So I wanted to sort of look at that option. And I think the perfect team to look at it through the lens of is a team like the Indianapolis Colts. There's some good pieces who should be able to compete at a certain level. And clearly quarterback is something they haven't been able to figure out. And they don't have their head coach in place. They're seemingly interviewing every head coach that's available right now. And all the lists of hot head coaches, the Indianapolis Colts have requested to interview them. But I picked the Colts because they have the 4th pick in the draft. So they have a powerful selection there that they could utilize to trade for players from other teams. That's a valuable resource. Maybe they add picks. Maybe they use a next year's first or a second instead, but they're picking high this year. They're not picking number 1, but they could go up to number 1 if they want to. So we could be, Young is in play, right? At the top of the draft.
Stroud,
Levis.
Right.
Players on other teams. We could be talking about a number of other players there. So if you're the Colts, let's say you're Chris Ballard and you really believe quarterback is the most important thing, short and long term, how would you start to rank those quarterbacks? Which phone are you dialing first, basically?
Yeah, that's interesting because I think all of us, when the season started, expected the Colts to be 500 or better, probably not Chiefs Bills level, but compete for a weak South division, probably with Tennessee. I mean, that was the perception going into the season. Got a lot of solid players, Leonard, Nelson, et cetera, Pittman, Taylor, of course, good defense, Buckner. And it didn't go that way at all. It was a disaster. It's not one person's problem, but their quarterback play was as bad as any in the league. And they tried, 3 of them, 4 of them, whatever it was. So you would think, plug in Derek Carr and we'll run this thing back and be fine. But we've seen that show from this team every year since Luck, Rivers, Brissett, on and on and on. I think you can't go down that road again if you're the Colts. However, as you were talking, and I'm going to avoid the question a little bit, and just full disclaimer, I haven't studied the rookies yet enough, the draft stuff. That's going to be after playoffs. I'll dig in heavy. If there's one that you love, one that I love, whatever, I don't think going from 4 to 1 is a bad idea at all. Even if it costs next year's first or, something else. It's not going to be super cheap. I think that's tremendous. I think it's a very good landing spot for a rookie quarterback. I don't know which one that would be. I think the line will be better than it was. I think they'll have a running game. The weapons are adequate, if not better, and are young. But as you were talking and kind of bringing the show in, I thought, what if Lamar Jackson were the Colt? Would they be in the playoffs right now? A full year of Lamar in a dome, not a real difficult division. That's not the same as Phillip Rivers to me or Matt Ryan.
Oh, no, very different. Well,
very different.
An injured Lamar Jackson wouldn't have helped that much.
Right.
But yes, like
think of their running game with Jonathan Taylor and Lamar throwing deep balls to Pierce,
A healthy Lamar Jackson for 17 games, and no doubt about it, the Indianapolis Colts are in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, are they the 1 seed? I mean, I don't know that that's that far-fetched. I bet they have double-digit wins and are hard to play against. Leonard's healthy. It's a stable defense as it's been for years. And you give up this year's first at 4 and next year's first for Lamar.
And then pay him a lot of money. So then cost starts to come into it. So you have to start to figure, it's like, okay, is Lamar Jackson worth this number 4 overall, which is a very valuable pick? That's worth like somebody else's 2 or 3 first-round picks.
Right. Baltimore wants to talk to the Colts.
Right. Because then the Baltimore Ravens can go, okay, we get a stud defensive player here, or we can go get our own quarterback here, or we can move back, and you do a lot of different things. But that's another thing for Baltimore is they got to figure out quarterback if they do move on from Lamar Jackson. But
they're not going to hand it to Huntley. There's no way. Right.
And it's easy to say Lamar Jackson ranks 1, okay, but then you factor in cost. And so that starts to change the equation. And then for the Colts, and this doesn't have to be specifically to the exact Colts situation, but I'm just talking about a team and how most of these teams would rank out quarterbacks and
Carolina, et cetera.
But I just think the Colts are an interesting one because of the position they're in, because they're not guaranteed to get the guy they like in the draft. So if you're saying, okay, well, it's going to cost us as much minus salary to go to number 1 to get Bryce Young, who's an unknown, why would we not call Baltimore first at least and offer the same package?
That's kind of what I was thinking. Right.
Something to go up. They might get a little, I'll say this as it pertains to the number 1 pick. If you're the Chicago Bears, who are in a really nice spot right now, and if you're convinced that you love your guy in Justin Fields, and if I'm them, I for sure would rather move down and keep Fields than draft a new quarterback there. And unless you get a bunch for Fields too, which is a possibility if a team's like, okay, we'll trade Fields, get something back, and you end up just swapping 1 for 1. If you like a quarterback better than you like Fields coming out, but clearly they like Fields enough. Different regime though, so we'll see. But very likely, I think what would happen is the Bears would move down if they get that offer. But for the Bears, I think you could get a better deal trading up with the Bears to stay in the top 4. Because
I think the top 4 is key, unless Levis asserts himself as makes it a top 5, which could happen.
Right. Exactly. So the Colts might be able to give up less than a insane crazy amount to go from 4 to 1, just because the Bears are like, well, we can still get,
we're getting one of those defensive guys. Very happy.
We're guaranteed because unless Stroud doesn't go or Will Levis doesn't go, because then it becomes a top 3.
If the team at 6 or 7 is calling, you're going to give me a lot. Team at 4, I'm a lot more applicable.
Absolutely. And as far as, and I'm with you, I've done some draft work and I've looked at some of these players, and I think, based on consensus right now, and that could absolutely change because Will Levis has a cannon of an arm, and you know how those quarterbacks like to rise in the draft. Right now, it looks like it is for sure Bryce Young 1, and he's almost creating a gap between himself and the rest of the field at quarterback. So very likely Bryce Young at worst is gone by pick 2.
Sure.
And you got CJ Stroud,
Houston,
right? And then so you got CJ Stroud next, and then Will Levis, and it's looking like that's clear. And then there's been some other names, in the first round, but not talked about as a top 5 pick.
Some GMs will hold the size against Young, though. I mean, they're just won't go down that road.
And you know what? The Colts have been kind of one of those teams.
And that's what I was thinking too. They're a big-bodied team. When
you consider the cost of moving up, that's why I think it's so interesting with the Colts at 4. If you're going to pay that much, we need to start talking about some, Hall of Fame quarterbacks. We need to start talking about some other things. What else could we do to leverage that 4th pick rather than going up and getting a guy who doesn't fit our size profile? And I mean, you look at Chris Ballard's draft, and it's size, height, weight, speed, everywhere.
Yeah. As we talked through that, I thought, well, maybe I just hang at 4, take Levis, call my old buddy Jacoby Brissett back, and go from there and run the ball a lot.
You're not guaranteed going in that you'll even get Levis either, because it is
No.
possible quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, and someone jumps over the top of you.
And then you're sad, but you take a great defensive lineman, and
you take a great defensive lineman. So you're in a good spot there. And here's the other part for especially the Colts is, and we'll talk a little bit about this next, is some other names that are out there. If the Colts say, okay, well, we had a higher grade on Trey Lance. We had a higher grade on Justin Fields or whatever. We had a higher grade on whoever. Let's go get Aaron Rodgers, and this is different than the other quarterbacks we've had recently. Let's call the Baltimore Ravens, and but the scenarios where they stay at 4 and don't draft a quarterback at 4 is an interesting one for the Colts that I want to talk about as well next, and then we'll kind of talk about how these quarterbacks rank out, and then I know you have some questions. You want to grill me a little bit about the great Brock Purdy next. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for betting information, statistics, news, and analysis this season. Of course, all the divisional round playoff odds, Super Bowl props, draft props, NFL betting galore at BetOnline. But you can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college hoops, NBA, MMA, boxing, you name it. You can find not only a way to bet on it, but you can find information before you make those bets at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. BetOnline is always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more at BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed up to the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. That is the home of Peacock and Williamson. You can also find Peacock and Williamson on all of your podcast platforms. You can also find other things on the Locked On NFL channel, like the Locked On NFL podcast, NFL key predictions, and game-to-game episodes from local insiders every week. Tune in and subscribe. Locked On NFL, Peacock and Williamson, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, now that we've kind of talked that through a little bit, the interesting thing for me is, would you rather start over with a rookie quarterback, or would you rather go Jimmy G? Would you rather go Derek Carr? Would you be willing to go trade? Like, here's the interesting scenario to me for the Indianapolis Colts. We've talked about it a little bit, and we won't talk too much 49ers on this podcast, but we're going to have to. Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. This is a very interesting situation. I think with the injuries the Niners have had, it would be smart to keep both guys, see what you have, see if the ceiling is higher with Trey Lance, let them battle it out. But you can also buy one of those players away, and teams will come calling to the 49ers. Pre-draft, the Colts, which makes the Colts even more interesting to me, pre-draft, the Colts gave Trey Lance their blue card, which is this is the player you want to have in your team's uniform. The Colts were drafting at 21 that year, so they didn't get up. They weren't able to draft their 2 blue card players. Their draft board was leaked, so you could see who their blue card players were. Their blue card players were picks 3 and 10 in the draft that year, which was Trey Lance and Devontae Smith. So if you're Chris Ballard and you're still the GM of the Colts, and that wasn't that long ago, and you don't have a reason to believe more in Trey Lance, you don't have a reason really to believe less in Trey Lance, but he has been banged up and had those injuries, but he's still the prospect, right? You wouldn't even have to give up pick number 4, although if because the 49ers won't trade him for nothing, but you could get potentially, maybe it's a high second round pick plus, maybe it's next year's first, something like that. You have to give up for Trey Lance. Maybe you do have to give up pick 4, but maybe you had a higher grade on Lance than you have on Will Levis anyway.
That's quite possible.
But the ultimate scenario for the Colts would be, well, let's give up next year's first. Let's keep 4, draft Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, and bring in Trey Lance, who we think is as good of a prospect still, and he's had 2 years to develop under Kyle Shanahan, and we might even get a sweetheart deal on this, depending on what he turns out. And so you could use pick 4 on that player and still go get someone like Trey Lance, or you can use that 4th pick on somebody else and bring in Derek Carr as a free agent. So I think there's a lot of options for a team like the Colts. So I'm just kind of wondering how you would rank those options out if you were a GM and you were trying to say, okay, even the cost, I would still go get Lamar Jackson, or I would be calling the Packers about Aaron Rodgers first.
Couple things to run by you, because a lot of these are Niner relevant. In particular, if I'm going Carr versus Garoppolo, if that's the route I like, which has been the Colts' way basically lately, I like Carr better. I liked Carr noticeably better before the year. That's changed slightly because he wasn't very impressive this year. But I bet Carr cost me a second-round pick where Jimmy's a free agent. Would you rather have Jimmy for free or Carr minus a second-round pick?
I think they're in the same tier.
Yeah.
I would go Jimmy, but then Jimmy kind of is plus still drafting a guy.
Yeah. And maybe it's a second rounder that isn't a big name guy, or maybe it's at 4.
Or maybe you move back in. Maybe you move down from 4, and that it just allows you so many other things. Maybe you move down from 4, move back up for Tanner McKee or whoever from Stanford. So then you've got Jimmy, stopgap, and rookie quarterback. So that's a possibility. Yeah. Or you could still draft one at 4 and sign Jimmy. So Jimmy allows you some flexibility, but I don't think you say, okay, we signed Jimmy Garoppolo, we're done. And Derek Carr is expensive, and I would go Carr first. But if you're trading a draft pick for Carr, that really means you believe Carr is your guy, and you're probably not going the rookie quarterback route unless it's, later round guy.
Okay. And then my next Niner GM question for you, if I'm at 4, what I know about Trey Lance, and I don't know as much about the rookies, and I'm not going to take that into account, I can't give you 4 for him. I mean, I could give you 36 or whatever that pick is in the second round and a conditional second. If he plays 12 games for me, you get the pick and we're all happy. I mean, but there would have to be conditions, and I don't think 4 could be on the table in any way, shape, or form, considering he's not played much.
I totally agree. And that's where it could work out great for the Colts. And because pick 4 is an auto accept if you're the 49ers because of what Brock Purdy has done. You get to completely undo that Trey Lance stuff. And if he turns out great, it's fine because you really love Brock Purdy. And you have to the Niners have to be real with themselves. Who's going to win this battle? Who would we bet on winning this battle next summer? Right. And if they think there's a good chance Brock Purdy wins it, you've got to trade Trey Lance. If you think, oh man,
you agree, they probably know that now.
Right. And there's
they've probably been around both of them.
The other part of it is they've seen Trey Lance more than anybody. They might be like, oh my gosh,
we screwed up.
No, though they also might be this
or the opposite.
Even better. Like,
imagine his wheels and his playmaking ability with the 5 skill guys we trot out there now. It would be even better.
They might say, well, how about we just flip the literal last pick in the draft for? I mean, is another team trading a first for Brock Purdy? A second? Like, what does a team offer for what they've seen from Brock Purdy? What if that's the route they go too? So, and that's the thing that'll happen. Somebody will call and be like, hey, what's going on with your quarterbacks? You got a couple of them. We like Lance, we'll offer you whatever. And then the Niners say, no, thanks. And they say, well, what about Brock Purdy? Right? That's probably what a lot of the conversations would be.
Probably. I have a Twitter question for you about Purdy. I don't think I liked him to this level by any stretch, but we'll talk it through. Teasing it all week. One other quarterback aspect, and this is true every year. Like my Steelers signed Trubisky, but there's the Darnolds and Mayfields and pedigree guys, I like to call them, that have been flops. Zach Wilson, that they die hard. Those guys die hard, especially a Wilson, because he hasn't been on multiple teams like Baker or Darnold and flopped it. And Darnold played pretty well. Like if I'm the Colts or I get shut out of the race I really want to be in, do I go that route? Do I go the Steeler route, the Trubisky Pickett route, the Darnold McKee route, something like that? Or is that, I think, or, if your Niners trade Lance or Purdy, then you sign Darnold too, just as an insurance. Like, I think there's always a lot of those guys floating around that have talent that haven't done it in the league that people still think are attractive.
So you would have Garoppolo with factoring in cost, you would have Garoppolo over Carr?
Yeah, but I wouldn't have said that a year ago. But yes, I would now.
If you and
your Niner quarterbacks scare me though. Their life's too easy. It's like watching Bama quarterbacks or Ohio State quarterbacks. I mean, that's going to be the third segment here is I feel like I can do what they do.
And that's it's either that or drafting an actual Alabama or Ohio State quarterback.
That's why I said that. Right. Yeah, and they've all day to throw, and they're throwing the first round picks, and the left tackle is a 5-star recruit. And it's like, this isn't that hard. They only play Georgia once a year.
Size will be held against Bryce Young. And Alabama talent, and the Ohio State history of quarterbacks will be held against CJ Stroud. right?
Fields might be the best one ever, and I'm not sure he's even good.
Yeah, I'm sure teams had at least as good and maybe even a better grade on. If Trevor Lawrence wasn't in that draft, Fields would have gone number 1 to the Jaguars. They said that's the only other player
Yeah,
they
right.
considered at 1.
And I understand that.
Right. So, like,
I absolutely
as far as
understand.
grades go, a lot of those 2021 quarterbacks might have had a higher grade than these players have this year.
Right. Yes.
So,
Lance, Fields, et cetera,
right.
et cetera. Right. Maybe even Wilson. I didn't like Wilson coming out, but so be it.
So
I don't know. There are a lot of options, but they're very different roads. I mean, they're it's a choose your own adventure book. And when you choose the first adventure, everything else goes out the door. You know,
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. So there's a lot of options and a lot of film watching that they've got to have to do. And there's going to have to be some luck involved. So do you try to take luck out of it? Would you still say, you know what, it's worth it? A known quantity, a player that's still prime age. Just let's call Baltimore, Lamar Jackson first.
Lamar keeps coming up as, you know, what's really the cost to him? If I'm in Baltimore, 4 goes a long way.
Because you probably get 4 and something. Next year's first. Next year's first could be number 1. You know what I mean?
Like if Lamar, it could be 32. Again, right.
Yeah.
It really is a wide range. Right.
So I would put,
I had never thought the Colts with Lamar, but as we're talking this in real time, boy, I'd be really interested if I were.
And it's kind of a similar conversation in a lot of rooms. I just thought the Colts is the most interesting one.
Sure.
Where they're drafting and they could have any endless options. Some teams couldn't get up to 1. Some teams, you know, couldn't get Lamar or whatever.
The Giants can't say, I'll just let Daniel Jones go and I'll trade up to 1 and I can make that happen. Well, they can't do that anymore.
So as we're ranking these, okay, next, a couple more questions for you because I want to throw Aaron Rodgers into this, and then I want to ask you where you would rank guys like Lance, maybe Justin Fields versus some of these rookies if you were a team like the Indianapolis Colts. And
that's going to be tough for me because I just haven't studied the rookies enough.
Right.
But I think Lance would have to be last.
Versus
Levis and the top 3 rookies.
Hold on, but versus trading up for Bryce Young is the question.
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
They all have a cost, right?
You like what we talked about. Like if we were hashing out that trade and you said, okay, this year's 2 plus a conditional something for Trey Lance.
I like that because then I have Will Anderson.
So that's that versus trading up, which is the same cost practically going to get Lamar Jackson to get Bryce Young at 1. So that's where it starts to get.
I've really been looking through a Colts lens only, but I'm sitting here thinking if I have Lance and I don't know, Darnold or whomever, trade for Zach Will, whatever, some retread dude behind him. And I have Will Anderson or Jalen Carter on that defense with Darius Leonard back and Buckner. Like, I don't need my quarterback to be a superstar. He's going to hand it to Taylor a lot behind Quentin Nelson, and this defense is going to keep me in things. And that's pretty attractive to me.
And it's a similar process if you're thinking about, say, the Raiders at 7, and I think they're feels like they're more likely to go veteran route. The Titans at 11, you start to get that same, and it's like you don't know who's going to get to you, and you'd have to trade up for that guy anyway if you really want to get
much hairier for those teams.
So the cost really comes into it with a lot of those. So it's going to be very fascinating with the draft, but I know you have a question. We got to
talk Purdy here too.
Next. Yeah. I want to throw one more. I want to throw one more name at you as well. A future Hall of Famer. A couple of future Hall of Famers next. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. You know, I've been talking about Built Bar for so long. They're fantastic. Go try that peanut butter flavor. I just love the classic peanut butter, but there's tons of great flavors. I really haven't had a bad Built Bar, and it's pretty amazing how good Built Bars are while they're also healthy for you. If you're looking for that delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try Built Bar. I know everyone's trying to get healthier in the new year, but it doesn't matter if it's the new year. It doesn't matter if it's summertime. It doesn't matter if it's fall or spring. You should be eating something like Built Bar instead of those snacks that are really just derailing your diet. And I know sometimes you got to reach for something. You need a little pick-me-up. You need that snack. Well, replace all those bad for you snacks. Just get them out of your house. Get them out of your desk at work. Don't have that sneaky candy bar in your glove box. Replace those things with Built Bars. Built is healthy and actually tasty to go along with it. Most Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, which really set them off. Unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, all while having only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. All that protein will actually satisfy you and keep you from reaching for something else right after you finish eating your snack. You can find Built Bars, of course, at built.com, but you can find them on your store shelves now, like Walmart and Sam's Club. That's right. Head over to your nearest Walmart pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of 4-pack of cookies and cream or double chocolate or coconut puffs. And Sam Club, you can get a 13-bar box of hit flavors like brownie batter, churro, and then you can thank us later. And of course, you can find Built Bars at built.com. Okay. Lamar or Aaron Rodgers?
Ooh, I don't know that either one has a great shelf life. I mean, Rodgers because of age, Jackson because of style. I don't think you have to run the exact Ravens offense for Lamar. In fact, I think it's been a detriment to him. I think you could be more traditional than they were with him. So I'm going to go Lamar.
And the cost would be somewhat similar. Probably.
I think.
Yeah.
Because you got to pay Lamar huge. You're inheriting a Rodgers contract.
Rodgers ain't going to play for free either, and
No.
you got to pay up with the trade stuff too. But maybe you probably
Green Bay gave him the signing bonus already, and
And I think it's still less likely with Lamar. And you got to pay everything. You got to pay a ton in draft picks and a ton in money.
Yeah,
but he's a lot younger, obviously, than
sure.
Okay, so Lamar, Aaron Rodgers, about Tom Brady. Just a quick 1 year guy.
I don't like it. I think it's Joe Namath with the Rams. I think it's Willie Mays with the Mets. I think it's a bad look.
Ryan with the Colts.
Yeah, I think it is. I fear that, but I also thought that when he went to Tampa Bay, and I was so wrong. But
right.
I don't like his unwillingness to take contact and hold the ball.
So Carr, Jimmy, or Brady? You already had Jimmy because of cost over Carr. Would you rather just sign Brady for a year or Jimmy to a deal? And
I was pretty rough just on Brady there, but he could have a final year Peyton Manning, just be smart, hand the ball off. Last year, Elway defense, much easier than Carr. If I had the Niners D, or maybe the Jets D for that matter. I'm trying to think of a quarterback needy team that could win this thing with D. I don't know that the league is built that way anymore, that you can win the Super Bowl with D. But if like the Raiders doesn't cut it for me. Like if
the Raiders are going to do something where they're still bad, I have a feeling.
I think so too.
A better quarterback will help them a little bit, but how much better is Brady going to play than Carr, right? And how much better is Stidham going to be than Carr if they decide to stick with Stidham? There's they have to improve a lot of other things first.
I think the Raiders should go young and maybe
I would go
right.
I would still go Brady over. Still go old Brady over Jimmy. Like if
me too.
For example, if Brady was the quarterback of the New York Jets this year, they're a playoff team.
They're a playoff team.
I feel like the Jets were playing a lot better than the Bucs were otherwise, even though beginning of the season, I don't think they necessarily you'd say the Jets were way better than the Bucs were aside from quarterback. But that's the way it kind of turned out. That's the way it looked to me. At least.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I think Brady could caretake his way through another year, but I don't think it's pretty if he's in Vegas.
Right. And so here's the other one. So Trey Lance or trading up with, multiple first round picks to go draft a quarterback if you're the Raiders or the Titans or the Colts.
See, I'm looking at Lance almost like I'm looking at Jordan Love.
And Love, I'm glad you brought up Love because he was one of the names that I meant to bring up because he's in a very similar spot. Less years of team control for Love, higher draft prospect originally, but not injured.
See, but I don't think Lance. I'd rather have Lance than Love, but I think Love only gets you like a third round pick if you're the Packers. Like,
that's the thing. Yeah,
you know what I mean.
It's a factor again, right?
I always link him with Atlanta. Like, what if let's give a third round pick for Love? Just let him and Ritter battle it out for a year. If it doesn't go well, we'll pick in the top 10 anyway, and we'll run the ball a lot, and we'll reinforce the rest of the team in the process. And then I think that's not a bad formula. Lance to me is. I'm going in and I'm going to make him the guy, but I also better have somebody else floating around.
All right. I know you got a question for me about Brock.
I can wait till tomorrow if you want, because we're going to talk games. I mean,
it's going to be a little bit longer conversation. Potentially?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it is.
And there's only 4 games on the schedule, right?
Right. All right. We'll fit it in.
The divisional round. So we got some extra time to play around.
We'll do a Niners segment.
Friday's episode. All right. Let's do that then.
Because I think the Cowboys are going to beat them by 100.
I'm going to say this. Like, I will be real about Brock Purdy tomorrow. I might still see him a lot different than you see him, but I have said a lot of things, and it's been so much fun. Like I'm really enjoying pretending that he actually is the next Tom Brady. That's kind of like my public persona. And when I'm online and when I'm on Twitter, he might as well be the next Tom Brady because that's fun. And what's going on with the 49ers run right now is crazy. So I'm having a lot of fun with that. But we'll be extremely real about Brock Purdy on tomorrow's show when we preview Cowboys 49ers and preview all of those divisional round games.
I like it.
Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. Back tomorrow, making divisional round playoff picks right here, Peacock and Williamson.